become a subject matter expert. We talked before this is like, no one would have planned this is what my career is, but pick something and just work at it. It's that whole mentality of how do you become good at something? It's 10,000 hours. Well, if you put a little time and continue to work on one thing as you go through your career, whether it's a discipline, whether it's sales or marketing or HR or
right.
Finance or an industry, take a couple things and just continue to, work at, study and learn and develop your talents within that area.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Tom McMahan, Business Development Manager with Delaware Elevator, headquartered in Salisbury, Maryland. Tom started his career at Miami Elevator right after graduating from Florida State University in 1990. And after 2 years, Tom left the industry for a time to experience international business. After returning to the elevator industry, Tom was able to apply his international experience, opening Lerch Bates' first office in Latin America in 2017. Tom values his friendships, connection, and all he has learned in the elevator industry. He believes your name and reputation are like gold that should not be gambled with. Well, Tom, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you. Appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah. Good to talk with you again. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate you being on here with me.
I enjoy these podcasts, so it's nice to be a part of one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know you've been super busy, so I appreciate you taking the time. And I obviously want to start with my favorite question, which is, tell me how you got started in the elevator industry in the first place.
All right. So I, typical college graduate, applied for a couple of different companies, and I was fortunate that Miami Elevator was doing interviews in Tallahassee, went to Florida State, and got on with them, and was fortunate they went through the whole process and answered all the questions and took the test and did some interviews, and was fortunate to come on board with Miami Elevator, who was a representative of Dover at the time.
Right. Had you ever thought of working in the elevator industry? Is that anything that ever crossed your mind?
No, not at all. I grew up in construction. My dad was a contractor who built homes. So I grew up in construction, did some concrete work down in Texas and some different places. But no, I never thought about the industry until I got involved with it. There's probably the connection with comfortable with the construction area. So there was a good connection there though.
Right. What was your degree in from Florida State?
Multinational marketing.
Okay. So obviously you weren't doing a whole lot of that initially with Miami Elevator, and I assume you were in a sales role. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I was, it was a great opportunity because it came in as a sales representative, but the first 6 months were in the field. So, I wasn't sure what that was going to entail, but my first job was in a 20-story building in West Palm Beach. Within that first 30 days, I was putting a deflector shiv up 20 stories up. At that time, standing on a 2x8.
Wow.
Was not some protection. I'm sure I had a harness there, but nothing like today.
Oh yeah. No, I can't even imagine. I mean, haven't been there, but so 6 months you were out in the field kind of as a helper essentially, right?
Correct. Yeah, I did 6 months, mainly new construction, but also some repair. And
Okay.
I don't think modernization was a thing at that time, but repair and service side and mainly the construction side.
Right. What? How long did it take before the elevator industry kind of clicked and you're like, hey, this is cool?
It was a great company. So, I mean, it was the good onboarding. I think about what typically a new sales rep gets in today is probably nothing compared to what that was. I mean, 6 months in the field, the other 6 months I had a mentor one of the
Wow.
senior salespeople that met with us on a weekly basis. We had, books to read, documents to learn everything about the contract, reading through a contract, how to negotiate a contract, how to sell, customer contacts, understanding the product line. So I was very fortunate to come in on a very professional. I was impressed on that side. Good people. I had a lot of good mentors just starting off from
Yeah, yeah.
first job.
How long were you with Miami Elevator?
So, but I was young, didn't know what I had, so I kind of took off. So I had a little few years away from the L, but I went to work for um, Lipton, Thomas J. Lipton. Got in the food business for a while, and then did a few things that took me off course from the elevator business. But eventually, um, part of it was just I wanted to work overseas, so I was always trying to find some connection to use my experience internationally. I backpacked Europe right before I finished college
Cool. Mm-hmm.
for a month, and kind of got that itch to I'm from the Midwest, small town. Didn't speak any language, really had no experience. My experience with international travel was crossing the border to go fish in Canada.
There you
you
go.
know, uh, but then I moved to Latin America and gained some experience, worked for a couple other Australian companies, some other industries. And then when I came back to the States and got plugged back into ThyssenKrupp, basically capitalized on some connections I had from the Miami Elevator days. Reed Kelly was a mentor of mine, really great guy, and just always professional. Always stayed in contact with him, and was able to get plugged back in with Thyssen.
Oh. Hey, what was it that led you back to the States at that time?
Oh, to be honest with you, I had an opportunity to go to Australia, and I'd lived in
Wow.
Latin America for 5 years, and I just felt it was kind of time to not go further away, but get closer to. I'm a very, very pretty good sized family, so I want to get closer to my
Sure.
family. And my parents were living in Florida, so that was short story, kind of why I ended up coming back to
Yeah,
the
you kind of
States.
scratch that international itch, and you're like, okay, I've been gone long enough, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. But then getting plugged back in with ThyssenKrupp, working in an office that I worked in prior under
Right.
Miami Elevator, same owners there in Fort Lauderdale. The itch back overseas, and the conversation started to come up again, and got the opportunity to start having conversations about going to Chile. My wife is from Santiago,
Okay.
so she came up, and then our daughter was born, and then there's a little bit of push, like I'd like to live back in Chile,
Yeah.
so kind of back and forth, and would go down there once a year and talk with the branch manager of ThyssenKrupp, and started meeting the regional managers, and um, then eventually came back to Chile with Thyssen.
Okay. So there was already a branch. I mean, obviously it's a big city, and were you running the branch? Were you doing sales? What was that role like?
No, actually, I'd had conversations for a while, and now it was a regional position for
Nice.
13 countries.
That
So
is a big position. Okay.
yeah, so I went from sales manager, and then a mod man, working mods in Fort Lauderdale, to moving to Latin America, and kind of bringing some of what I'd learned in the past, the best practices I'd learned, and trying to bring that to the service sales side for ThyssenKrupp and Latin America. Managed for Mexico South.
Wow.
Basically, Thyssen had 13 countries minus Brazil, and I helped another VP manage that side of the business.
Wow. So a lot of travel, it sounds like.
Yeah, first 6 months was nonstop, just getting out, just seeing the countries. It was it's a challenge, and most of the countries had one major branch, maybe some smaller branches, like Mexico. But in general, the main branch was either in Santiago for Chile or in Lima for Peru, Bogota for Colombia.
So, and I'm just curious, does the elevator industry operate like significantly different in other countries, or and maybe it's different from country to country? I wouldn't know, but what was your experience from the U.S. to Latin America, and just kind of seeing how business is done?
Yeah. Starting with the mechanic, like many things, I don't really know if we really appreciate what we have here. An opportunity for a mechanic in the States, and I've seen many go from a mechanic to an ops guy to a branch manager to as high up as they want to climb, right? To the president of the company.
Right.
In Latin America, it's much more difficult climb. You start off as a mechanic, you really don't see yourself as ever getting much higher than a supervisor, maybe a regional guy, but it's a little more tougher for climb. And then the unions in the States have much more support, much more training. The unions I saw, the few were less mature, working on benefits versus training and proper helper apprentice programs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So just a lot more resources is what it sounds like here in the
more
States
more
versus
more developed, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So how long were you with TK again in that role?
So I was with them for like 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and then I moved from there to an opportunity, talked to Lerch Bates, and found an opportunity to open the office up for Lerch Bates in Santiago, and helped start to develop their business in Latin America.
So again, kind of the whole of Latin America. Were you still the multi country responsibility?
It was all countries. Yeah. That they didn't. I mean, Lerch Bates is great people, great company. But they didn't have anybody that spoke Spanish really connected. Typically, they would send a consultant to Brazil or wherever, and they would do a good job. But their day to day is just busy with their local work wherever it's at in Florida or Texas or New York.
Oh wow.
But it's a tough. It's also maturity. It's very difficult to sell the owners on paying a premium for the consulting side of the service.
Okay. So the industry hadn't really, like you say, matured to the point where the owners are like, hey, I see the value in this extra service.
Yeah, they saw the value, they just didn't want to pay for it. Right?
Okay.
It's like we're here, it's just more natural. I think that's the difference too. Like preventive maintenance. Unless you're talking about a Ford factory or some more international company, a Bechtel, the average smaller companies aren't going to invest and pay. They'll let's fix it when it's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more of a little more challenge. We had some good successes with the Metro in Chile and
Sure.
some other things, and they continue to have success. And Mexico is a little closer to the market. There's also a cultural fit.
Sure.
So Mexico is a little more. It's part of North America, and there's much more connection there.
A lot more, yeah. American companies are producing right, just across the border, and I know from companies I've worked with before that a lot of them have a presence there. So it sounds like a lot of it was maybe an education or just a relationship building process that probably took a little while to just develop it.
Yeah, things take longer. Yeah, definitely. It take me 3 years to get into a clinic, or with the Metro, it took about that long to build the relationships and talk through things. And versus in the States, it's like either like you don't, and if you can come back again, if it's a good product, it's many things are that way. I mean, like I was saying, appreciating what we have here in the United States. If you're a hard worker and you you show up on time and you put forth the effort, we're going to give you an opportunity. And maybe an opportunity over the person that's better educated, but doesn't have the same discipline, right?
Right.
In Chile, it's a little bit more difficult that way. In Latin America, you have to have a name, you have to know who you know, and there's not as much grassroots opportunity as there would be, organic opportunity as you would have here.
Yeah, thanks for describing that, because so many people I talk to are kind of like what you're saying. They start at the bottom, you learn what you need, and then, if you want to start your own company, if you want to create your own consulting company, if you want, it's there's opportunities aplenty for those who want them and are willing to go after them. So
Right, right. If you're hardworking, show up on time, you're honest, have your integrity, the right mindset. I think it's it's not easy. I mean, it's hard to run a business. You can be a good mechanic, but you may not run a business. But there's an opportunity there.
absolutely. Yeah. So how long with Lerch Bates in that role?
So Lerch Bates was about another 2.5 years. The issue there was just got started. First full year was 2019, and then the pandemic hit in March 2020, and it hit Latin America harder than the States. Things just shut down.
Yeah. How
So
did that affect your work? I mean, you probably couldn't travel probably at all for quite a while.
yeah, no, it's much more difficult to travel. Yeah, I mean, in October of 2022, which is just last year,
Right.
they removed the public masks being
Oh my
law.
gosh. Okay.
Right. I mean, during the pandemic, I had to pull a permit twice a week with a barcode to go to the grocery store, and I had to show them this barcode. And if I didn't have it, go
Nothing.
home. Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine have we had just laughed. We were like, you're complaining about masks. Like, what if you told someone in the States you can't leave your house unless you have this barcode? I mean, it wasn't that just go to the supermarket. You couldn't leave the house. You had the right twice a week. But they had a different. It got pretty ugly, right? They didn't have the healthcare set up system to supplement, so it was kind of hairy there for a while.
Yeah, sounds painful. So, so I guess from there to where you are now, correct?
Yeah. So
tell me what you're doing now, and
so
where you're at.
I just have very fortunate to have found Delaware Elevator, and I met with had an interview and talked with the owner and got plugged in with Pete Meeks. And it's been great. When I was out looking and kind of searching companies, I was looking for kind of like the old elevator days with Dover and Miami Elevator. I didn't mention the Baileys, the owners of Miami Elevator, were just the right people. If you worked hard, you did the right thing, then you were rewarded for that. Not to say that doesn't happen within the OEMs, but sometimes it's a corporation, right? And it's all about the numbers. And so found Delaware and got plugged in and started off in business development back in May of this year, April, May. And now I've kind of gotten more involved with some of the ongoing strategic planning meetings, and we have leadership meetings twice a month, getting into lean manufacturing. We're implementing ERP. So, and the lovely thing is my office is above the factory floor, and that's a first for me. So it's kind of, I started in the field, kind of went corporate, regional manager, and now actually working out of the factory is very nice because I get to walk down and see, we in Delaware does a lot of custom work. So, we'll have a platform for a 20,000 pound capacity elevator being built on the floor.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah. You can be there and witness all. So obviously back in the States, right? I guess kind of the
yeah,
coming back from Chile.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so Delaware is based in actually in Salisbury, Maryland. It's originally from started in Delaware with it's his third generation. So Pete's grandfather
Cool.
is the one that started it, a little north of here. But great part of the country too. I'm from the Midwest, so didn't know much about Maryland, but I get here, it's all cornfields and kind of small town, and but it's got the plus that it's 4 hours from New York, a couple hours from DC, Philly, Baltimore, so it's in a great well positioned in the Mid Atlantic for business wise.
Sure. Or you can get out to the ocean if you want to do some sailing, right? You're not too far from.
I walk and watch the sunrise every morning here. The ocean off in the distance. Yeah, it's nice.
Very nice. Very nice. So, obviously you've had a very unique career from, starting out and then going international and then coming back and going back international, but this time in elevators. And what are some of the biggest lessons that you've gleaned along the way?
Well, first, just never burn bridges. Stay connected. That has helped me, um, not only for my career, but also just friendships. David Spencer was my, in Fort Myers when I got plugged into my first branch in sales. He was the operations manager, and he's like a brother to me. We're part of the family, Um, so I think relationships are key. It's good to network, right? You're in sales, you got to network. That's how, and not to be the influencer track, but you got to do a little of that to get your career going. But don't look past the friendships you're building, right? Because if it's one thing like in the industry you're in, but you need to have those go-to people that you like, you love to do business with. And I think that's key. And I'm completely blessed. I get phone calls from a hotel manager in Peru that's still having problems with ex OEM I won't mention, or a guy that worked for me that is now in charge of started his own company, and he's in Monterrey, Mexico, at a factory, uh, or people from my hometown. I just got this network that's it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that from so many people, and even myself, just friendships, people I've talked to. Just the other day, I was talking to a gentleman, and I'm just looking at my notes from in my database where I kind of keep track of everything. And I'm like, you realize we first started talking like 10 years ago. Never met him in person, right? But we've been on the phone off and on for like 10 years. I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Well, technology is awesome as well. I was through the pandemic. I was talking to Yanni, who works with Lerch Bates, and I hadn't really talked to them much since I came back up, and I keep in touch with some people. But I was at the New York office, and I walk in, had all the consultants there, and she walked in, and we talked through like this,
Right.
through the pandemic. We never actually met, and she's like, "Hey, nice to finally meet you." I'm like, "That's right, we never met you," because I think that's the beauty of today's technology that we didn't have before. Just the face to face. It's amazing how to continue to build and keep in touch with people.
That's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one thing I love about the like the NAC conference. I mean, you and I first met in person in October. We'd been talking for probably a year off and on about, different things, opportunities, especially as you were looking to move back to the
Right.
state. So
Yeah, no. And so then you solidify with a face to face, but then you can continue and build the relationships, continue to network like.
yeah. It's a remarkable industry, and I enjoy it. I enjoy these conversations. It's nice to me to have real relationships. Whereas I don't know, just my previous more corporate experience was like, this is transactional, but it's not personal, right? It's like, hey, we're just doing business together. We don't talk. We don't necessarily care about each other. We're just getting something done. Whereas in the elevator industry, I see people all the time that care deeply for
Oh yeah.
friends and associates, and hey, we worked together 20 years and we're still best of friends. And that was
Oh,
not my experience prior to.
oh, it's amazing too. I mentioned working with Dover, for example, and we were went to starting to work international business in Canada, and actually we'll be going to Mexico soon as well in January. But a couple of mechanics in Toronto, and they're like, "Yeah, you were Dover," and you just think that connection. Actually, I was on a call a little while ago with a guy that worked for Northern uh,
Right.
earlier today. So those connections continue, and those commonalities and those common things that we have. That's what relationships are built on, right?
Absolutely. Yep. There's definitely something special. So as we kind of well, before I ask my final question, I'm just curious, anything you want to bring up before any parts we missed, or anything you want to just kind of share about your journey?
Um, no, I kind of going everything. I would say I'm very happy where I'm at now. Back with hopefully this. You can never say never. Who knows where I'll be here 5 years from now? But I'm very excited to work with Delaware. Pete Meeks is just a great guy that I've traveled throughout the region, Canada, Texas, Chicago, and wherever I go, he has good reputation, and that's important for me. When I started with Lerch Bates, I told him I'm gonna open up an office here, and most importantly, I'm not sure how the business will go, but I'll always protect and respect your name, because the name's what really all we have at the end of the day,
True.
right? And the older you get, the more that makes more important it is. So I'm very, very happy to be at Delaware and working alongside Pete to take his business forward.
Yeah. Very cool. There you go. So the last question I want to ask is, what advice would you give, if you could look back in time at young Tom coming out of Florida State and, you know, embarking on his new elevator industry career, what would you say to the newbies that are just starting out?
I think one of the challenges anyone with drive has is just you know hold the course. Don't be impatient. Stick with something. I was fortunate that I'd bounced around a little bit, and I came back, and I jumped back the elevator industry and said, I'm going to stay here. I got some good advice from some mentors, and that's also become a subject matter expert. We talked before this is like no one would have planned this is what my career is, but pick something and just work at it. It's that whole mentality of how do you become good at something? It's 10,000 hours. Well, you know, if you put a little time and continue to work on one thing as you go through your career, whether it's a discipline, whether it's sales or marketing or HR or
Right.
finance, or an industry, pick a couple things and just continue to work at, study and learn and develop your talents within that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as you do, you become more valuable. You become, you can, in a lot of ways, write your own ticket, or at least write a lot of. You have a lot of different options, I guess, is what I was getting at
Right.
as you become more valuable.
It becomes easier and you're more comfortable.
Yeah,
And what do people buy? They buy confidence,
true.
right?
Yep.
I've been in many meetings when someone else I'm looking at them like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but they're buying into it, and that's part of it. It's that confidence, and if you have the knowledge, but you have to get the experience too as well, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Yep.
in our industry, you've got to you have to have a customer with a difficult situation and go through it to be able to deal with the next challenge.
True. True. Well, yeah, obviously you gotta have the challenges, make some mistakes. That's how I always learn is land on my face a few times, and then I'm like, oh, I start to get it. So
Yeah. 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 Oh, I got
yeah.
my daughter's going to be going to college next year. So already this has been difficult because she's finishing up school in Chile
Yeah.
and then be going to college up here. But I think in some ways it's been good. I've been away. So she's, it's like, look, you got another year. Whatever you feel like it's a challenge here, it's going to be twice in a year. It's going to be more complicated. And then when you get out in the career, it's more. So you just got to get through it and know that you'll get through it with no problem.
Yeah, that's great advice, Tom. Thank you again for being on with me. I appreciate it, and wish you the best as you continue to build your career.
Very good. We'll see you at the next show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.